I spent the morning with my Savior, which brought me through my afternoon. And by the time I reached the evening, my soul was singing hallelujah. Like a ship tossed and driven, I've been up and down. Like a prisoner in prison, yes, the devil had me bound. But I know my future's brighter than the past I left behind. Had a little talk with Jesus, and the victory is mine. I spent the morning with my Savior, which brought me through my afternoon. And by the time I reached the evening, my soul was singing hallelujah.
Good morning. Good morning and welcome to Good Morning with me, Caffie. I am your host, and today I have a special guest, a special friend of mine, and I'm so honored and delighted that she has agreed to join us this morning. And her name is Rabbi Ziona Zelazo. I call her Ziona. We will refer to her as Rabbi Ziona today. She is my friend. I met Rabbi Ziona, many years ago. We did clinical pastoral education chaplaincy work together at Valley Hospital in Ridgewood, New Jersey. And I'm going to read you some of her background. She was ordained at the Academy for Jewish Religion in New York. She is the daughter of Holocaust survivors and was born and raised in Haifa, Israel. She served in the Israeli Defense Forces as an electronic intelligence sergeant during the War of Attrition and studied biblical archaeology and ancient languages in Tel Aviv University. Before her rabbinic ordination, Rabbi Ziona was a cultural anthropologist and an adjunct professor of cultural anthropology at Montclair State University. Her research included studying the acclimatization, I think I'm saying that right, Ziona, process of 5 Ethiopian families who immigrated to Israel with Operation Moses. Rabbi Ziona is an educator, a service leader at the synagogue, and a life cycle officiant for weddings, funerals, memorial services, and baby naming. She is also a chaplain. Her clinical pastoral education came from Valley Hospital and Overlook Medical Center in New Jersey. At Valley, she had an internship on the surgical floor at the hospital in the Reno Care Center in Fair Lawn. And at Overlook Medical Center in Summit, New Jersey, she interned in the Neuro ICU units. She is still at Valley as an associate interfaith chaplain for the last 12 years. She is also a certified disaster chaplain in Bergen County, a certified disaster spiritual care provider for the American Red Cross. She was deployed and served those who were afflicted with disaster for local natural disasters, and also lately for Texas and Oregon. Rabbi Ziona is married to Ronald and has 3 adult children and 6 grandchildren. We welcome Rabbi Ziona. And before we start, Ziona, you know, I call you affectionately Ziona, no disrespect.
Yeah.
But one of my fondest memories of you, and I thought about this in light of today, was when we were both chaplains at Valley Hospital in Ridgewood, and you had received a phone call from the pastoral care department, and you called me, and I said, I'll take it. You said it's an African-American family, and I don't know what to do. And I said, I'll take the call for you. And she said to me, she said, no, tell me what I need to do because I want to do it. And as a rabbi now, Ziona, as still a Jewish person, she went in and ministered to that African American Baptist family. Right. And I was her coach, if you will, coaching her along. And Ziona, that just holds me. When I think about you, I always think about that beautiful memory. Do you remember that, Ziona?
I will never forget that. This is not to forget. That's right.
It was beautiful. Right. It was beautiful. So you have a wealth of information, but I have asked Rabbi Ziona to come here today to talk about the book of Job with us. The book of Job, out of the Old Testament. Job was an upright man. He feared God. He shunned away from evil, but he couldn't deal with or escape, if you will, the sufferings that were at hand. So I've asked Ziona to come and share with us from the Jewish perspective of Job. So Ziona, you're free to talk.
First of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to air this program with you. What an honor it is for me. And what you and I learned about grieving and mourning in Valley Hospital always remains, because I remember how you were put in the ICU and you were dealing with death from the first day you started your internship. Yes. And I remember how you grew into it. And I also remember always talking with you about Job and in our breaks.
Yes.
So first of all, when you ask me to talk about the Jewish perspective,
right,
about the book of Job, I just want to make a note so everybody is aware of the fact that when you're saying Jewish, it's not a one place where we say there is one idea or one opinion. You know, Judaism is divided into denominations.
Okay.
So, you know, I can talk about the very traditional perspective of Judaism, but on the other end, on the spectrum, the continuum, we have Reform Judaism.
Okay.
So I will make sure that I will note which denomination I am talking about and what is relevant to our days. So, so first of all, you want me to talk in general about the book of Job. So I also want to make note that the book of Job is actually a mystery.
Okay. Why is it a mystery,
Because there is no common understanding or common agreement who wrote the book, when it was written, and who is Job. Who is Job? You know. And so there were some speculations written in the Talmud. So the Talmud is the books of wisdom in Judaism it's a combination of edited oral Torah.
Okay.
The Bible is the written Torah.
Yes.
But side by side, there was oral Torah that the traditional Judaism believed were received from God too in Sinai. So in that Talmud, and you see all the books behind me, these are the books were written about it, is that some rabbis thought that Job lived in the time of Moses.
Okay.
And other rabbis say, no, we think that Job was one of the people who was in exile in 580 BCE, after the first temple was destroyed. And some think that it's probably Job lived in is a descendant of Abraham, the patriarch. So in one book, you see there was no agreement. And then the book itself is written in a very tricky language. So it's written in Hebrew, but it's written in very archaic, old Hebrew, which means, and then the linguists have noticed the influence of the Aramaic language in the Hebrew. So even like I am a Hebrew speaker, native Hebrew speaker, and I can promise you that I don't always understand what the text is saying. So the difficulty is, again, can we find out from the language when was the book written? Okay, so from the language wise, again, there are different ideas, you know. Maybe, well, the consensus is now today coming closer to the time of the Second Temple period. The Second Temple period is like you know, this when the temple was destroyed around 70 CE. Okay, so saying that, the other question that we see now in the Talmud is the question, so if we don't know anything about the time and who wrote it, is the book real? So can we say that perhaps that the story in the book is really not real?
Oh, wow.
That we think maybe Job never existed. But why are we reading this? Why is the book in the wisdom section of the Hebrew Torah, the Hebrew Testament? You know,
it was canonized as part of the Holy Bible with all of the various books as well.
It was canonized. The reason is why. And the sages, throughout tradition to reform, they believe that the book is a parable or an allegory to show us who are we. We're taking the story of suffering and mourning and put it in front of us as a mirror. And we say, what happened to Job can happen to me. We say what happened to the contact between Job and his friends. You know, we have those experiences with our friends too. So we see that this book is here to teach us something.
What is it here to teach us, Rabbi? Because we look at Job, we look at his background from what we are able to read in the text, and then we looked at what he went through in a short span of time. And then we look at how God restored him at the end. So what is it here to tell us in light of all of the suffering and the deaths from the pandemic, from people dying from COVID-19, people dying just period within this season where we've been in this pandemic? What does this book teach us?
Oh, let me organize my thought around it, because there are so many ideas that come to the book. I'm a reward and punishment.
Okay.
The question of reward and punishment, that that we all, when we suffer as human, we all say, or you know, as chaplain, they come, why me? Am I punished? What's wrong? Why am I suffering?
Right. Why is this happening to me?
For suffering. And you know that Proverbs teaches us that there is a complete correlation between what you do and the consequences. So if you're a good man, only good things will happen to you, and you will flourish like a tree in the desert, right? But in Job, we see the opposite. We see that the reward and punishment doesn't really work. You know, so Job's friend are a proverb people, where they say to Job, you know what? But there must be something. You can't be completely perfect. You must have sinned. That's why you suffer.
Right.
But and Job says, no, there is no reason. So what can we ask ourselves then? Is it always important to find out why are we suffering? Is it really always important to say the why instead of how am I dealing with my suffering? What can I do to deal with my suffering? And so then we can go more into the fact that because Job and his friend didn't know that they are actors in a game. They are actors in a game between God and Satan, right?
Let's talk about that. Let's unpack that.
Wow.
Because my viewers this part of the book where it is so clearly defined of what was going on behind the scenes. Talk about that to us. Teach us, Rabbi.
So there is, it's like, let's start with the fact that Job is described as perfect,
yes,
honest, fearing of God, and doing only good things, right? And God is very proud. God is proud. Is His creation is such a perfect creation, and when He talks to Satan, who is and according to the Jewish tradition, Satan is only a part of the entourage of the other angels.
Okay.
God has with him. Okay. So God is he's enticing Satan. He says, see, like a boy, see, look at my servant, this the idea of the servant and the king, I'm the king, but this is my servant. He's so perfect. What do you say about that?
Right.
And again, so now we see that God, and excuse me for saying that, seems a little bit not perfect himself.
What do you mean by that?
Because he was able. Sorry?
Say that again?
God couldn't be that perfect. If he was able to be enticed by Satan. It was God who provoked Satan. It wasn't Satan who provoked God.
Right.
Okay? So now there's a question in my mind. Why did God do that? Right? If he really wants to make a point, isn't everything God that is doing is perfect in our minds? Everything is because it was meant to be like this from God. So I am asking, why did God do it? And in fact, but later we see that God was winning because the first part, Job did not curse God. He didn't bless him. As we say in the book, it says bless instead of curse. But it was like really, really dandy, right? Until later on, we see that his questioning of God became an issue by itself. Okay, he was doing everything to find God within himself, and in the beginning, not asking the question until he was so suffering, because the infliction came to him like. It's like when you read it in the chapters, here's another messenger coming. It's like you cannot catch your breath when you read that, So he suffers losses of not only his family, he suffers loss of his wealth, and then his own health. And God and Satan are there looking at this, and yet they do nothing. God is doing nothing. So what comes to your mind? Right? It's a game. Are we also part of a game in our own life? Let's ask that. Are we playing somebody else's game? It's something
But
that
if we're part of creation, right? We're creatures, part of the creation story. God as creator, you know, he can do what he wants in the affairs of man and or woman and humanity. Let's just go there. And none of us can by any means stop that, interject in what God is doing, because God, as we know God to be, he's sovereign. So even in this story with Job suffered a lot of loss. You know, there was bereavement overload. The messengers kept coming one after the other, telling him what the outcome was. And he finally got to the point where he shaved his head. Talk about that kind of suffering, Rabbi.
So you know, the suffering itself, which needs to be dealt with. And let's cluster for the moment the term mourning and suffering.
Okay.
Because it's like the mourn of loss of everything. We grieve about losing not only people, you know, we can grieve about, you know, other things that we are, even when we lose a job, we can mourn that loss. And then the consequence of suffering. And of course, he was suffering because he was sick himself. You know, he had boils and stuff like that. One way that we learn from the book of Job is what we do, how we handle that, is by ritualizing that concept of mourning and suffering, by actually acting on it in such a way that to give it expression, to give it some kind of expression which solidified your own feeling of what's happening. So we are reading that he was tearing his clothing with sack on. He was shaving his head. He was, you know, covering his body with earth, with dust, right? And these are all signs of mournings.
Okay.
That we actually still in Judaism in a whole, you know, we use some of those elements. Like, for example, when he said, God gave and God is taken
away. Yes.
And we say that during funerals for everybody before we bury somebody.
Yes, we say it as well in Christianity too.
Oh,
yes.
Great. Thank you for teaching me that.
Yes.
And then
the Lord is given, the Lord is taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord.
That's right.
Yes.
Exactly. I did not.
It's okay. It's okay.
So, you know, like we learned that the mourners sit on a small stool, you know, lower than a regular chair. The comforters that come visit, they're also sitting eye to eye, low. The idea of ash and dust, we don't do this anymore because we're sitting in homes and
right.
But you know, we took that idea and we put the pouch of earth from Israel in the casket, and then each one of the people in the funeral take a shovel and they put dirt. I mean, earth, not dirt. I don't like to into on top of the casket. So maybe it's kind of a commandment that came through that ritual of putting your body and showing that what is earth? It's nothingness. It's the lowest form of something, right? You know, we came from, God created Adam from the earth. And the earth we are going back, right?
Yes.
It's this idea of ritualizing the nothingness that we are left with. And by doing it, I think it's easier to comprehend for the mourner and for the people who are visiting the mourner as
So
well.
then how does someone, you talked earlier about handling the suffering, right? Understanding the purpose or the intent behind it. I know Howard Thurman, and I quoted this during Good Friday services. He talked about coming in contact with your suffering, you know, looking at it face to face, handling it before it handles you. In other words, understanding what's the purpose behind it. Yeah, we can look at Joe, we can study this until we're blue in our faces. But what do we say to the person that's reading this book and they're trying to figure out where they are in their own life, and especially during this season of the pandemic? What do you say to that individual, Rabbi?
First of all, the idea of silence.
Mm-hmm.
Silence is golden.
Okay.
And you see that we as chaplain also are trained to be the presence of
Yes.
because words are not always the one that need to be heard during bad times.
Mm-hmm.
We have seen that the friends were sitting there for 7 days,
Right,
without talking, until the mourner starts talking. He nods in the head, and then he says, okay, let's start a conversation. But this conversation is not to say, why are you suffering? Oh, it's going to be okay. Time will heal. Some people say things, but they are not very productive. So we don't want to say to anybody, time will heal or everything will be okay, rather than say, I feel your pain, I'm with you. Just know that I really feel I'm trying to be with you. You're not alone. Words like this, or words that will heal, will be words of affirmation of the pain and suffering that is seen by the mourner. We are not here to fix as comforters. We can fix the problem. We can bring back as the lost one. We can bring your job back. But no, I am with you. And what we see, what is really astonishing to see how Job's friends have done everything that I said not to do.
right.
Okay?
Right.
So they started with theology. They started with questioning, Job himself, which is not very helpful. I could imagine that he was kind of, there's no reason why they should ask that, unless they thought that by converting the conversation into a theological nature, it will take away, it will distract the mind from the pain. So, like we can talk to somebody about the news or the sport news when we visit the sick or somebody, but then for a moment we take away those kind of harsh feeling. And it's true, it's possible, but they went overboard.
Right.
But I can tell you that my personal feeling about that is that they thought they are doing the right thing. They didn't maliciously started this conversation. They really thought that they will engage Job in a comforting, and then it developed into something they probably didn't see.
Right. And or understand, because, you can sit there and hold space. We refer to it as holding space with someone. And then, when it's time to say something or to speak, then we interject our own thoughts. But Ziona, we're running out of time, but I wanted to just mention in chapter 42, Job is restored.
Yes.
Is that the hope of the person that has suffered? Do we look for chapter 42 to come in our own lives?
I always believe in the word hope. And some people ask me, don't we sometimes give false hope? there is no false hope when hope that you create in yourself brings positive energy. It's healing. It's part of, it's not curing, but it's healing to know there are good times coming out, and now, like with the pandemic you mentioned before, and I didn't really address anything about that because we talking about isolation, and it's
Yes.
so the contact with people during the pandemic is a little bit different than what we had before. But on the other hand, the conversation that we can have on the phone, or we support people with we say, even by saying, okay, we have the vaccine, that's a hopeful situation. And thinking that we don't know whether it's going to come or not. But
Yes.
keep in mind that when God forbid your child dies and another child comes, there's no replacement.
Exactly.
He got 10 more children, but what about those who died for him? I think we need to take in mind that even when people heal and restore, the pain is there, and I believe that it's going to be there forever. And it's not, we should not dismiss that fact that when you get restored, you may have started a new page in your life, but you don't erase the pages that you were reading before.
That's a good point. I like that. Ziona, we are literally out of time. This has been a great conversation, Rabbi. I love you. I appreciate you. It's just so good seeing you, whether it's here. I know we typically meet in White Cloth at that restaurant for lunch or something, and we'll have to do that once this is cleared up. I would love to take you out to lunch just to say thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate you. I thank you all for joining us this morning. This has been another episode of Good Morning with me, your host, Caffie. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this broadcast. If it's been a blessing, share it, like it, subscribe to our channels. Thank you again, Rabbi Ziona.
Okay.
Love you.
Good luck for everybody. Healing in your midst.
Thank you. Thank you. Love you.
Bye.